Hello and welcome to Founder Voices, the podcast where we amplify the journeys of bold founders, visionaries, and changemakers shaping the future. I'm your host, Clement Akron, and today we are joined by a truly inspiring guest, Dr. Sanchia Alasia. Sanchia is a multi-award winning global equity, diversity and inclusion practitioner, a public speaker, and a community change maker. Over the last 20 years, she has worked across the public sector, helping organizations to build truly inclusive cultures where staff feel supported, valued, and respected. And I'm a beneficiary of that service because I met Sanchia when I was working at the Church of England, and as part of my onboarding process, she delivered an amazing workshop, and I remember we exchanged details and where we are. Here we are today. Currently, she serves as diversity and inclusion lead at Transport for London, while also running her own consultancy, Sanchia Consulting Limited, dedicated to driving sustainability, EDI change for organizations and communities alike. She's also deeply involved in public service, having served as a councillor in Barking and Dagenham, where she made history as the borough's first Caribbean female civic mayor in 2018 and 19. Sanchia, it's an honor to have you on Founder Voices. Welcome.
It's a pleasure to be here, Clement. Great to be on the show today.
Thanks. So let's start with your journey then. Could you share what inspired you what inspired your commitment towards equity, diversity and inclusion?
Absolutely. Well, working in the field of equity, diversity and inclusion was something that I never planned. I never planned to work in the field of diversity or human resources. So my first foray into this field was actually quite by accident. So this is actually my second stint working at Transport for London. I worked at Transport for London from 2003 to 2007 as an admin assistant in the street management team. And whilst working there for the first time, a colleague invited me to attend a newly formed BME staff network meeting in 2005. And at the time, I found it all quite intriguing. And after attending several meetings, I saw that Transport for London were taking the issues of equity, diversity and inclusion quite seriously. And then furthermore, I went on to be elected as the co-chair of the BME staff network in 2006 and sort of ran that network. And we worked with Transport for London so that they could hear the views of our members. And as chairs, we were also invited to key strategic meetings with senior stakeholders of the business. And we were really able to help influence some innovative programs around positive action, mentoring and coaching for BME staff. And so that's where it started. And I've just continued in this field because I developed a passion and a skill for helping organizations to develop their inclusive practices. And so over 15 years on, I'm still happy to be doing this work.
Wow, what an amazing journey. What about your political involvement? You still involved in politics? I mean, where are we now?
Yeah, so again, politics was never something that I planned to do. Nobody in my family was like a politician or even remotely interested in politics, even voting in elections or anything like that. So I'm not quite sure where the interest came from. But I remember when I was doing my A-levels at Leighton Sixth Form College, and we did a module around politics, and that really kind of just sparked my interest. And I also remember getting a letter from Tony Blair, and this was in 1996, and he was seeking to be the leader of the Labour Party. And I got a letter to meet him at a reception, and I kind of looked at the letter and, I was just like 16, 17 years old, and I felt quite overwhelmed by the letter. So I didn't actually go to that reception.
You frame it.
Who knows? But obviously...
Did you frame that letter?
I didn't, unfortunately. I didn't. It could be worth a lot of money now. Who knows? But in 1997, Tony Blair was elected as the Prime Minister of this country, and he was Prime Minister for 10 years. And what happened from me doing that module at college is that I got involved in an organisation that's still running today called Operation Black Vote. And that is led by Lord Simon Woolley. And they do an MP shadowing scheme for people from underrepresented groups. And so every year they kind of have a call out, and they have kind of an application and selection process for people that want to shadow MPs. It could be because you want to find out more about what they do, or maybe you think you might want to run to be an MP. But at the time I saw the scheme, and I was more along the lines of, I'd like to find out more about what MPs do and see if it's something that I'd like to get involved in. So I applied, gosh, way back in 2006 now, and went through their selection processes, and I was accepted onto their scheme. So I was paired with Sadiq Khan, who is now the Mayor of London, but at that time he was a newly elected MP, and he was the Minister for Transport. And I had a really good time shadowing him because he took me around his constituency. He brought me to his surgeries. He took me to his ministerial meetings with the big transport chiefs. So I really learned a lot from that. And walking along the corridors of the Houses of Parliament one day, I bumped into Diane Abbott's PA. And I was quite shy at the time, so I don't know where I got the courage from, but I kind of said, well, Diane Abbott is obviously the first female Black MP, and I would love to also shadow her. I'm on this scheme with Operation Black Vote. Do you think we can make this happen? And so Carol, her name was, Carol Glenn, she went to talk to her boss, Diane, and Diane agreed. So once I finished the shadowing period with Sadiq Khan, I then went on to shadow Diane Abbott, which was really nice because it was a different perspective. She was really open with me about her journey, about the struggles, and she gave me a role of kind of helping out with the press. So obviously they had an official press officer, but I was kind of like the assistant press officer, so to speak. So keeping on top of the news stories. And in those days, it was a lot of newspaper cuttings. It wasn't kind of the 24-hour news cycle that we have now.
So all that.
So looking at the newspaper cuttings and seeing what the stories were about her, giving her a summary of what was out there in the big wide world. So yeah, I went on to do that. And then I kind of moved from where I was living at the time in the London Borough of Newham to the borough next door, Barking and Dagenham, and got involved with the local Labour Party. They were looking for new candidates. They wanted a change because in 2006 they had 12 BNP, British National Party councillors elected. And they were looking for new faces to challenge them in the 2010 election. And I didn't actually think anything of it. I was just helping out, but they actually sat me down and said, we think you would make a good local councillor. Would you consider putting yourself forward? And it was actually a white man that actually sat me down, and that really shows the importance of allyship. Somebody who's not like you, but sees the talent and sees your possibilities. And so I agreed to put myself forward. I was elected in May 2010 as the youngest female councillor. And I served just under 12 years, and I decided to take a break and pursue other interests.
Wow. Any more politics on the horizon?
Not for now. I think, I served just under 12 years. I chaired the planning committee. I chaired the health committee. So I did lots of work over the years on health. And we know that there's, that's a whole nother subject, the differential health outcomes that you can have for certain groups. Planning committee was involved in, development across the borough. And then I was privileged to be the civic mayor in 2018. So yeah, I think for now, I'm not looking at anything immediately, but never say never, I guess.
Never say never. Absolutely. So looking back at your 20 years experience in public service and consultancy, what have been the defining moments that shaped your approach to leadership?
I think for me, what I enjoy about the work that I do is I'm working to harness the power of difference. So how do we help organisations such as the Church of England and others to build their capacity to tackle issues around diversity? And it can be really challenging work as well, but that's what I like about it, because no 2 days are the same. In the equality, diversity, and inclusion world, you have to manage competing interests. You have to help organizations define their key priorities, because not everything can be done at once. So you can have, a 50-page action plan, but actually it might be much better to have 3 key actions that you want to achieve, and buckle down on those. And so being able to use those techniques that I have learned to help organizations realize their inclusion journey is something that defines me. And there's been a lot of things that defines me. I've won many awards, and each one is quite precious to me, and acknowledges the work that I've done. But I think the most impactful thing is when you get feedback, either from your clients or from delegates who have been on your courses, about the impact that the course has had and the things that they might do. So some of them are like, right, I've been stuck in a rut and I think I've got some skills now to move forward in my current organization. Some of them, like yourselves, have said, actually, I want to take a completely different path. And actually, this course has helped me realize that actually I need to move out of this organization and either go somewhere else, take a career break, or do something else completely. So I think the impact that I have on individuals, the impact that I have on businesses, is something that keeps me going, and also highlights to me the importance of this work. And it's a changing landscape externally, but I think you have to keep banging that drum and have to keep working towards having that equity, diversity, and inclusion, which will ultimately serve organizations to realize their goals, achieve their strategies, and solve the challenging problems that they face.
Yeah, right. Just for context, could you just tell us about these workshops that so some of the titles and the context of these workshops that you deliver?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's quite a few different workshops. So I deliver kind of awareness around equity, diversity, and inclusion. And I think for a lot of organizations and for a lot of people, that would be the starting point, particularly if they haven't had a lot of exposure to the concept. So what is equity, diversity, and inclusion? What do the concepts mean? So exploring that with participants, exploring what it means for them, exploring what it means for them a lot of the times in the workplace, and particularly like if they're managers and leaders leading diverse teams, what does that mean for you as a leader? What are the things that you need to role model, and as an inclusive leader leading diverse teams? And then you have branches of that. So once you kind of know that people have the essential knowledge around those basic concepts, you can then move on to more specialized workshops like, inclusive recruitment practice, unconscious bias, tackling bullying and harassment. I worked in higher education for many years, so developing an inclusive curriculum, cultural competency. And then I also do leadership development training. So I work with an organization called Advanced HE, where we deliver leadership training for BME staff in higher education. So we kind of support BME staff on their leadership journey, and we give them leadership concepts and help them realize what their leadership style is. But we also, which I like quite uniquely, bring in how we celebrate Black and Asian culture and the leadership traits of that. So one of the things that we bring in is, for example, the cultural capital that we have. For example, one of the things that I talk about is storytelling. It's a concept from Tari Osso. A lot of us grew up with storytelling. I remember my grandparents sitting me under the banana tree telling me stories of Anansi, for example, Spider Anansi. And actually those skills of storytelling, rhyme, rhythm, and captivating an audience can actually be pulled into the workplace as a leadership trait. So rather than us, and particularly a lot of the time when BME staff come into the workplace, they don't feel that they can be their authentic self. I want to help people be their authentic selves, recognize what those traits are, and bring those into the workplace to help them develop their career. So I think those are some of the things that I do. And I also, can signpost people where needed as well, to other services. For example, people might want coaching, and there's a brilliant network of coaches out there, and so on.
Yeah. Do you feel organizations actually appreciate the quality of work that the likes of yourselves and others are bringing into the workforce, or do you think oftentimes it's treated as a tick box exercise? I mean, I'll give you a good example. For instance, Donald Trump and his policy against EDI and the impact we see. Do you see a spillover of that in Europe and the UK, for instance?
I think we have seen some companies in the UK, not really public sector companies so much, but we have seen some companies in the UK, particularly where they have maybe head offices in America and so on, pull back a little bit from the equity, diversity and inclusion agenda, and saying they don't feel it's necessary, pulling it into wider sustainability initiatives, and that is a bit of a shame. But I think with equity, diversity and inclusion, the landscape is always changing. So if you think about 5 years ago when George Floyd was murdered, and we had the Black Lives Matter movement kind of rise up, a lot of organizations were kind of quite openly making statements about equity, particularly in relation to race. But 5 years on, have they really followed through? Do we see equitable outcomes for Black staff? Are they able to progress in their careers? We still have an ethnicity pay gap for those organizations that do it. So the thing with equity, diversity, inclusion is sometimes you can feel like you're going 2 steps forward, and then sometimes you can feel like you're going back. But I think it's important that organizations have a strategy that is their North Star, that they can have a focus on the things that they want to achieve, so that even with all these external things happening, they've got, tangible things that they've committed to, that they will, focus on and do. But yes, it's a challenging landscape at the moment. Organizations, some organizations are pulling back, but others are actually saying, no, we do want to have a diversity strategy, and we do need, equity experts like myself, either on a consultancy basis or, substantively full time, to help us drive that forward, because we're not going to get the outcomes for the business, and we're not going to get the outcomes for the community that we serve unless, equity, diversity and inclusion is embedded throughout all the work that we do.
Yeah, it's such a shame, because oftentimes you find companies treating it as a nice to have. And at every opportunity, that's where the budget slash comes in. Oh, let's cut it. We haven't got money for that. Sorry. And I guess that's what, apart from the fact that there's some underlying, ideology with the likes of Trump and the rest of that, but some of the companies will use economic or financial excuses to just slash budgets on inclusion and diversity. This leads on to my next question. So what does it take to become an equity and diversity consultant?
I think it's about working with organizations to drive systemic change, because we've just talked about that. It can be seen sometimes as a tick box exercise. And if organizations treat equity as a tick box exercise, they're not going to have sustainable change embedded through the organization. So I think what diversity practitioners like myself seek to do is, how do we drive that change systemically, so that there is change throughout the policies, the processes, the procedures of the organization? How do we make sure staff working in your organization feel also that things have changed? So are staff at the end of this program going to feel like they're included? Are they going to feel like they're valued? Are they going to feel like they're working in an inclusive culture? So it's more than just bringing the lived experience, but the lived experience is important. As a Black woman that has a long-term health condition, it's really important that organisations hear the lived experience of diverse voices. But what diversity practitioners seek to do is develop the strategies that will ensure that the work that is being done drives sustainable long-term change, and it's helping organizations identify what are the priorities. Can we do that in a consultative way with staff and your trade union so that we bring people along? Because if you bring people along on the journey, everybody will pitch in, and that will make the strategy more sustainable as well. And what is it that we're hoping to achieve at the end? So what's the end goal in terms of, let's say, for example, if it's a 5-year strategy, it's not like the work will be done in 5 years, but at the end of the 5 years or the 3-year strategy or the 7-year strategy, what would have changed? What would have changed in the organisation to make it better for diverse groups of staff working here, for all groups of staff working? Because actually, when you improve the outcomes for one group, actually most of the time it has a ripple effect on many more groups.
Interesting. So what would you say the biggest challenges are current role?
I think the biggest challenges are the external societal events. We have Trump, we have the Supreme Court ruling that happened a number of weeks ago. We have kind of, even if you look at the kind of protests, and peaceful though they may be, around asylum seekers. So there's lots of things happening externally out there. And obviously, we as diversity practitioners have to be flexible. We have to be flexible to what's happening out there, but we also have to stay true to the core principles and the core work, despite what's happening out there externally, and that can be a challenge sometimes. We have to make sure we have diverse voices, and that might mean opposing voices, but we do have to listen to everybody, and we do have to ensure that everybody feels valued and everybody feels heard. And that can be a challenge, but I think that's really important. So I think the challenging thing is working with so many variables, both internally and externally, but making sure you don't completely lose focus and you're not kind of pulled from pillar to post, and you still have your core pieces of work that you're going to do that, you know, once completed, will drive forward that inclusive culture.
Excellent. So you've built a successful consultancy firm. You won awards on impact. What do you believe makes EDI initiatives succeed rather than becoming a tick box exercise?
I think once the initiative is delivered in an organization, they have to have a follow-up program, and the follow-up program could be the consultant that you worked with, or it could be done internally. It doesn't really matter. But I think once the programs have been delivered, organizations need to think about, how are we going to make sure that what has been delivered is truly embedded, truly has an impact? How are we going to do a meaningful follow-up? So the organizations that are most successful develop those follow-up points, those touch points where they touch in, see how the delegates are doing, or they might even give them, like, for example, a project or something to work on where they can take the principles that they've learned in the sessions and say, right, now put this into practice. Or they might migrate onto something else, mentoring, shadowing, coaching, and so ever. But it's that constant support. So it's not doing the program and then, you know, ticking it off on your risk register. We've done the program, well done. If we're audited, we live up to whatever it is we're being audited for. It's actually having that follow up and having someone or a group or a team in the organization that actually drives it from the center. So it's really important that when organizations invest in this training and development, they have a proper follow through so that that investment is not lost.
Absolutely. And then when it comes to impact, you've got a lot of recognition for your impact. And this leads me on to my next question. From being named one of the top 100 most influential African business leaders to being recognized as one of the 50 most inspirational Black women in the UK, what do these acknowledgements mean to you personally and professionally?
I mean, it's humbling, I have to say. It's really humbling that these organizations would look at my work and count me worthy to receive this honor. So I take it as an honor. I don't take it for granted. But I think it also cements the approach, that my approach is grounded in the realities of what organizations need to do to be inclusive. So it kind of confirms that I'm on the right track with the work that I'm doing. Obviously, the work needs to be refreshed from time to time so that you're current. So it's not that you keep delivering exactly the same thing in exactly the same way, but the foundations of what I'm doing are sound. And I think that's great. And yeah, it's a real honor to receive these recognitions and to know that the work that I'm doing is having an impact, both here in the UK, but also globally. So yeah, it's a real honor, and I feel really privileged to have received these awards.
So in terms of reviewing your work, then how do you do it? Do you do this through peer review, or what's the process of keeping it fresh?
Yeah, I think it's looking at what's happening externally. It's keeping myself up to date with what's happening in my profession. So I am, for example, a member of the Chartered Institute for Personal Development and a number of other professional organisations. So what are the sorts of things that they are saying? What are the trends that they are saying that I need to keep on top of? So keeping on top of my profession, making sure I'm up to date with the relevant knowledge. So I'm always on top of what's happening in diversity and inclusion, what sort of cases are going forward to the courts, because that sometimes can change your approach. On the program that I work with Advanced HE, I'm co-program director. So with the other program director, we will sit down every year. We will go through the program. We'll look at the feedback from the delegates, but we'll also look at what's happening kind of in the UK and see where we need to tweak things, because you've got to make sure things resonate. You've got to make sure things are current, but you've also got to make sure you don't lose the foundation. And if you've got a good program or a good set of programs, you want to keep that core, but make sure that it's refreshed and it's alive for when you're delivering it.
Excellent. You also recently received an honorary doctorate in Christian business leadership.
Yeah.
How did that milestone feel, and what does it mean to you in your journey?
Yeah, it was a real honor in March this year to have received that honorary doctorate, as you say. And I think, yeah, that was...
And where did you get it from? Who was responsible for that?
So it's an organization called the Power of Love Ministries, and they have universities both in the UK, Nigeria, and America. So I was really privileged to be nominated for an honorary doctorate. They have kind of a nomination process, like most universities do, where you can nominate people for honorary doctorates. And I was nominated, and received it and collected it in March. And it's a real honor because I know the nomination committees of these organizations, receive a lot of nominations. And yeah, it's a real honor that they thought that my work would be worthy to receive that. So again, it's something that I want to use to kind of just cement the work that I'm doing, propel me to keep going, despite, whatever else is happening. So yeah, it was a real honor to receive that.
Well, congratulations once again.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
So beyond your professional work, you've been a passionate campaigner and advocate for endometriosis. Did I pronounce that properly? Endometriosis.
Yeah, that's
Excellent.
right.
Can you share your personal journey and why this cause really matters to you deeply?
Yeah, endometriosis is a cause. I mean, I was diagnosed with endometriosis in December 2010, actually. So about 15 years ago now. But I got involved with the charity. So the charity
So
endometriosis.
sorry, Sanchia. So what is endo?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah, let me talk about endometriosis. So, endometriosis in its simplest form is tissue that grows outside of the womb where it shouldn't be. And so it can cause a lot of pain and it can cause a lot of discomfort. So, that's it in its simplest form. So, I was diagnosed in December 2010. I had been suffering with pain during my periods ever since I was a teenager at the age of 13, and had been back and forth to the doctor, but we couldn't work out what it is. So I was diagnosed, but I got involved with the charity Endometriosis UK in December 2010. No, sorry, not December 2010. That's when I was diagnosed in March 2020. I've been on the board of trustees now for 5 years. And what I've been working with the charity to do is really develop their diversity strategy. Obviously, women suffer with endometriosis, but women from different communities may experience how they are treated by the medical professional community in a different way. So a couple of months ago, for example, we had a session with Black women, and they were talking about being gaslit when they went to the doctor, for example. So these are the sorts of things that the charity needs to take into consideration. And over the last 5 years, the charity has come a long way in terms of advocating for diverse communities. So that's really what I've been doing with the charity. Like, what is the makeup of the women that have endometriosis? How can we make sure that their voices are heard and that the support that the charity offers recognizes the nuances? But also, how do we work with the medical profession to make sure that women are getting diagnosed in a timely manner? At the moment, it still takes an average of 10 years for women, but from once they first present with symptoms, to be diagnosed, which is a long time to be suffering. We still don't have a cure, so we want research, and I'm working with the University of Edinburgh with Professor Andrew Horn, who is also the newly elected chair of the Endometriosis Worldwide Society. They're working to do research to find a cure, because there is currently, no cure. So it's just kind of working on all fronts to raise awareness of the disease. So I help them to raise awareness. I've been, for example, on BBC News, Sky TV News as well, raising awareness, getting people out there to understand, working with politicians to get them to raise it in the Houses of Parliament, and also work with the NHS to get more support for women. And working with medical professionals to raise their awareness, and with research bodies to do more research into this disease. So, on a number of different fronts.
Yeah, wow. So would you say you're making traction? Things that are changing? What's the response been like?
I think the response has been huge. If I think when I first started talking publicly about me having endometriosis, say in 2018, because it was one of my mayoral charities when I was the civic mayor in Barking and Dagenham, not a lot of people knew about it. And one of the things, for example, it is a difficult name to pronounce, so that doesn't help either. But if I think now, 7 years on, there's a lot more awareness of it. It's on the TV, it's on the news, it's in the papers. And there's a lot more people talking about it, and a lot more awareness about the impact that it has. You've got MPs talking about it. You've got
Wasn't there a newscast or TV presenter that came up recently?
Nagamon Shetty, I think it was.
Yes.
She has a sister condition, which I also have as well, called adenomyosis.
All right.
Which is like a sister condition to endometriosis. So you've got people and other sports, very prominent sports people talking about it publicly and saying, look, I struggle with this. And if people look up to these people as role models and think, well, they struggle with it, it's okay for me to struggle with it, but it's also okay for me to reach out for support, because the charity is all about support. I actually run a support group in Romford as well for women that suffer from it as well. So what the charity is there to show is that you don't need to be alone in this. There are support groups, there is information, we can help you get the support that you need. So reach out to us and don't feel ashamed that you have this condition, because actually over 1 million women in the UK have this condition, and there are things that you can do to help manage it.
So what would you say to all this then? I mean, what can we do?
I think what you can do is support the charity, give a donation, because we are a charity. We don't receive government funding. So yeah, go onto the website, support the charity, even if it's £1, every pound counts. So that's the first thing I would say. And then I think just support the work we do broadly. So if we're promoting something on our social media channels, retweet it, like it, share it. Because, you may have 10,000 followers. So if you retweet something that we're doing and talking about in terms of endometriosis, you then tweet it to your followers, and then the word spreads. So spread the word. Look out for our campaigns on our website and on social media, and help spread the word.
Excellent. So what's the role then of founders and leaders? What role can they play supporting health, equity, and advocacy within their organization? So broadly tying this now to equity and diversity and inclusion.
I think that's such an important question, because conditions like endometriosis, particularly when it's quite severe, like how I have it, would be classed as having a disability. And disabilities can be seen and disabilities can be hidden, like endometriosis is. So I think organizations, if they want to get the most from their staff, need to support their staff that have long-term health conditions. And it could be diabetes, it could be cancer, it could be a whole wide range of things. But actually, where I've been supported, and I've been fortunate that in all of the organizations that I've worked in, I've had reasonable adjustments to support me when, I'm in quite a lot of pain. Over the last year or so, my pain has been managed quite well because of the medication that I'm on. But prior to that, I, used to suffer quite bad flare-ups, but I got the support from my organization to work from home, to do the things that I needed to do to get myself back into the right place. So support your staff, ask them what they need, provide those reasonable adjustments, have the policies in place also, those workplace adjustment policies to support your staff so that they get what they need. And I think what you'll find is if you support your staff with these long-term health conditions, you'll get the most out of them. Me having endometriosis has not stopped me from being a leader. I'm currently in the senior management team at Transport for London. I've been able to be involved in politics and be a civic mayor. So yes, there have been challenges in terms of managing the condition alongside that. But because I have received the support, it makes it much easier for me to manage that condition alongside the various things. So support your staff, talk to them, find out what they need, and put the support in place for them.
So what's your vision then of an ideal world? Because you're so passionate about what you do. You're a change maker and you're driving change and making impact. And people like yourself always have this idea of a vision of where they aspire the world to be. So what's yours?
Yeah, I would say my mantra has been for many years in relation to equity, diversity and inclusion. Equity protects us all, diversity reflects us all, and inclusion should be there to support us all. And so I think for me, in an ideal world, I would want to see everybody protected from discrimination, not experiencing discrimination, harassment, bullying, or victimization. I would want to see workplaces, charities, organizations being reflective of the populations that they serve, but not just having a diverse group of staff for a tick box sake, as we've discussed earlier. Having diverse group of staff in their management and senior management teams, so they're actually really driving influential change. And then the other thing is that people would be able to feel themselves and be themselves and bring themselves. So, sometimes people feel like they have to hide part of who they are because they're not sure if it will be accepted. If people could truly feel included, supported, and appreciated in the workplace, that for me would be an ideal world, an ideal workplace, and better, not just for the people working there, but better outcomes for the workplaces themselves.
Excellent. So if you had the power now, so if you had the power politically, what would be the one thing that you will change? And again, that same question, if we can also apply to the corporate world, what would be, so let's look at politics and let's look at the real world.
Yeah, I think in politics, if I could change one thing, I guess it would be that politicians, whether in national government or regional government or local government, would just have the resources they need. Because I think it's a real struggle for governments to deliver the agenda they want to, because there's so many choices that they have to make because of limited resources. So I would want to be able, if I could wave my magic wand, just provide all of the resources that they would need to deliver all of the programs.
So in terms of resources, what do you mean?
So
Human resources, financial resources?
It could be in terms of finance. I think that's the obvious one, but it's not just finance. In terms of people, in terms of knowledge, because knowledge is also power as well. So them just having the resources to deliver in terms of people, in terms of knowledge, in terms of the finance, because there's always choices that need to be made because of these budgetary restrictions, whether it be in organizations, whether it be government. So if that restriction could be removed, I think that would help a lot.
Some people argue that politics, oftentimes we don't get the best deal because the people that go into some of the people that go into politics, not everyone, are not really qualified, or they've not got the capacity to actually handle these issues. And I think you've touched on some of these things like resource. I remember when I used to work for the FSA, what is now the FCA. One of the challenges that we had was the fact that the best brains ended up in the city. And you had a regulatory body with a framework with people with the best intention, but oftentimes we didn't have the resource to actually monitor and manage these big banks. And oftentimes you find people end up in the city, and once they get to a point where they think, all right, I want to slow down now, then they come to the FCA, or they feel, it's time for me to do a bit of good for the world. I've been in the banking sector. I've seen the weaknesses and the gaps, so I want to come into a regulatory body. And every now and then you get people. Also, some end up in politics and think, power is the place. The change should come from power. However, so would you agree with the argument that, and again, it's not necessarily about degree sometimes, because sometimes you have people with the best qualification, but they lack the empathy and the people skill to bring the right people into the room to make this decision. And we can see the impact on that now with Brexit, with swings from to extreme parties in Europe, we've seen in America, and because people are disillusioned, people feel, well, it doesn't make any difference. You vote the left, you get this. You vote right, you get this. And there's that frustration about politics, and also within the BME populace, for want of a better term, where people feel nothing changes anyway. What's the point voting? And I know a lot of work has gone into trying to educate and empower Black people to vote.
I was involved with the last digital census, and I was involved in that campaign, advocating and speaking to churches and faith groups and local charities and any network to try to convince Black people to get involved in the census. And no one's after you. Just, put yourself forward, put your details there. It has nothing to do with the Home Office. Just, this is really important because it informs a resource and policies and, budgets and stuff like that. Please put yourself forward and be counted. So what's your view?
Yeah, I think you raised some important points there, Clement, because there's another saying as well. If you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And what that simply means is that decisions, whether they be policy decisions, whether they be practical decisions, are being made about us all the time. And we've got to find the most appropriate way to influence that. So, for example, if you don't like the government of the day, you might not necessarily be able to get rid of them tomorrow, but we know that they will only be in power for so long, particularly in the UK anyway. So if you don't, the power of your vote actually could change the government. And I was just reading yesterday, I'm part of the Labour Women's Network, and there was one of the other members who was standing to be an MP, I think, or a mayor, I can't remember. And she lost that by 6 votes.
Wow.
By 6 votes. And I remember embarking in Dagenham Council in 2014, one of our councillors won by just 12 votes. He won by just 12 votes. So sometimes these things can be won or lost by a very small margin. So people think, well, my vote doesn't matter. My vote doesn't count, but they're not seeing it in the grand scheme of things. Is 10 of you, 20 of you, 50 of you, 100 of you actually go out and vote, for example, you could be the deciding factor between whether it's a Labour MP, a Green MP, Liberal Democrat, Conservative, or whatever. You could actually be. And it doesn't seem that way behind the scenes, but in the practicality of politics where I've been involved in, your vote can really make a difference. So, but it's not just about the voting as well. It's also about, if we take it back to the community, it's also about being caring about the community in which you live. So if we talk about local government, there's a lot of decisions that are made about the local community. There are a lot of consultation sessions that the council will have. There will be a lot of open meetings where members of the public can come and give their views. And you don't see a lot of people coming. You do see a lot of, for example, older people coming to those meetings and older people actually voting in elections. But unfortunately for other groups, younger people and other diverse groups, you just don't see that engagement. But for example, your council could be making a decision to close a youth centre, for example, which would have a big impact on young people. We need to hear young people's voices. But what I did when I was a politician was I saw it as my role to also be a voice for the voiceless. So if, for example, young people weren't at the meeting, it wasn't about not taking into account the impact on young people. I've got to be that voice for young people. I've got to say what the impact is. But there's lots of opportunities for you to get involved. There's lots of charities. There are lots of ways for you to get involved in your local community. And it doesn't have to take a huge amount of time. And you don't have to get involved in any and everything. But do kind of think about how you can make a difference and how you can contribute, because you'll be surprised. Some of the decisions that we were going to take as a council, when we had that council chamber full of people saying, no, this is not acceptable, we had to change tack. And if those people weren't in the room, they wouldn't have had that influence. So you can have an influence and you can make a difference. And it's really important that we see that.
Excellent. So what makes an effective politician?
An effective politician is actually a servant, which, as you alluded to earlier, some people get into politics for all sorts of reasons. They could get into it because they really want to serve their community, which is the reason why I got involved. They could get into it because they think it would give them a degree of power and it will give them a degree of influence and elevation. there's all sorts of reasons why people get into it. But a true politician, from my perspective, is one who serves. You serve your community because you will represent a community from all walks of life who have been in situations that you haven't been with. I've had to represent people who are homeless, who have kind of health issues, who have housing issues, all sorts of issues and problems that I haven't personally gone through, but I have to be able to empathize and identify with them and to be able to advocate for them, advocate for better housing, advocate for whatever support. And even stepping outside of politics a few years ago, I've still been able to use the skills that I've learned about how things work in the political world. So there was a crowdfunder that I saw a little while ago, and the crowdfunder was saying this person is going to be chucked out on the streets or is on the streets. We need to raise money. And I got in touch with the person organizing it and I said, there's another way to do this, actually. What we need to do is we need to get in touch with the local council. We need to get in touch with the local councillors and we need to get her some temporary accommodation. And I was able to get that person linked up to their local councillor, to the housing department, and they're now in a flat. So actually seeing that crowdfunding page, but knowing actually that wasn't really, so I didn't donate anything to the page because I said that's not going to help the person. What the person needs to be doing is guided through the process. And so the skills that I've learned there have been able to help that person. And that's just really great. And I've helped so many other people as well that way. And I hope I'll be able to continue to do so in the future going forwards.
So how do we get people like yourselves back into politics?
Well, the thing is, it doesn't have to necessarily be me coming back into politics. You know, I can also mentor and support people who don't know how to get into it. I run a group called the Labour Black Sisters Network, and we're a group of people, politicians, former politicians, activists. And so I've mentored a lot of women that wanted to get involved in politics, and some of them are councillors today. And so it could just be about supporting people who are interested, or even if they don't want to become a politician, supporting them to navigate the process. They may want to lobby, for example, on a particular issue. They might want to get resources for a particular issue. I can, help them navigate that and understand how the political system works.
Excellent. So what's the future then? What's the future for Sanchia?
Yeah, I think for me, I've only been at Transport for London for just over a year. So I want to continue working there, continue helping them to deliver their equity, diversity and inclusion strategy. And I think I want to continue doing kind of my public speaking, coming on shows like this and just sharing and imparting knowledge. I'm speaking at a number of conferences and things over the next few months. And
do you want to tell us about them?
Yeah, so I'm speaking.
I support you.
I'm speaking at a conference next month, Wisdom for Women, and I've been involved with Wisdom for Women, Pastor Marjorie Samoe, for a number of years now, and she has an award, the Wise Women Awards, and I was privileged to win an award way back in 2014, so 11 years ago now. But she has a women's conference every year, and she's asked me to speak next month on career development, actually, and how we navigate our careers. So it's, again, a church not just focusing on spiritual stuff, but recognizing that they need to give their members practical things that they can take to the workplace, things that they can use in family life, for example. So yeah, I'll be privileged to be speaking at that next month.
And what else you were talking about?
And then aside from that, October is Black History Month, so that's not too far away now.
Yeah.
And so I'm normally pulled in to speak at a number of events for that. They haven't all been confirmed, but yeah, I'm normally pulled in to support a number of events for Black History Month in October. So I look forward to speaking, but also just listening to the various events that will be happening that month as well.
Excellent. So what does the future hold then for the likes of practitioners like yourselves? I mean, some argue that, a lot of the political capital that was developed or acquired in the 60s and the 50s have been lost. And one of the many reasons behind that is because as change came, people lost momentum and felt, well, there isn't any need. And some argue that, well, that shouldn't have been the situation. What would have happened? We could have evolved and continued this work, because it's a long road to freedom. It's not, we're not there yet, and we know that there's this idea of change happening over time, and as humans, we some of the things that are right today will not necessarily be right tomorrow, and some of the things we thought were right a while back, we realized that no, those things not right. I mean, we could use examples like slavery. We could use there are lots of examples that we could actually use. And people argue also that with the advent of AI, that perhaps some of these ethical and moral dilemmas that we face as a society will be addressed and answered. And there was this really interesting article that I read, and someone said, look, when people thought slavery was right and legal, some people genuinely felt it was right. Other people had their agenda, and other people felt, no, something's not right here, but I can't put my finger to it. But over time that changed, and public opinion is something that changes over time. And some argue that with AI, we would have this objective entity that will be able to see beyond the biases and say, you know what, yes, this is right, this is wrong, from an ethical framework. What are your views on ideas like that?
I think you're right. Public opinion changes over time, and we see, even with the things happening in society over the last few weeks, the mood can change. I think AI, I'm kind of getting to grips with it a little bit more. I'm sure I'm not using it to its full capability, but I think we have to remember that AI is powered by humans, and so there will still be bias in that, because there are humans that are coding these things, and how are they coding them, and are they taking into account the diverse range of perspectives and voices in that. But I think one thing that we have to be mindful of as practitioners is that we have to constantly adapt, flex, and change. If we don't adapt, flex, and change, we're going to be irrelevant. So we have to adapt, flex, and change, as I said before, without losing the core focus of who we are or what we do, and the foundations that we've kind of built our careers and names on. But we do have to adapt, flex, and change. The only thing that is certain is that there will be change, and that will keep going. If you think even from 5 years ago, from COVID till now, the perspective, for example, on working from home, and a lot of people were struggling through their organizations to be able to work from home. And now I recognize, people are going back to the office, but most people, not all, most are able to do some kind of hybrid arrangement, and that wouldn't have been thought about 10 years ago. So things are changing. We have to make sure we check what we're doing on a regular basis to make sure that it's still relevant, it still meets the organization needs, it still meets our customer needs. So we can't be stagnant, because the world isn't stagnant. So we need to make sure we keep up to date. We need to make sure we're on top of our game so that we can best serve our clients, our customers, our organizations in the best way.
Excellent. I knew this talk was going to be really great, and I was really looking forward to it. And yes, thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much for making it happen. So we've come to the end now, and we would like to say a big thank you to Sanchia for joining us today and for sharing an incredible journey of leadership, advocacy, and impact. Before we close, we'd like our listeners to connect with you and follow your work. Where's the best place to find you, Sanchia?
I think the best place to find me is my website. So it's just my name, www.sanchiaalasia.com. And if you look for me on the social medias like X and Instagram and LinkedIn, it's my name, Sanchia Alasia. Quite easy to find because it's not a common name, so you should be able to connect with me.
Excellent. So this has been another episode of Founder Voices powered by Cottage Factory. If you've enjoyed today's conversation, please like, share, and comment on this episode. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you never miss a story. For sponsorship opportunities, we're looking for sponsors, or to share your feedback. You can reach me directly at cakran@cottagefactory.co.uk. So that's CAKRAN for November at cottagefactory.co.uk. So thank you again for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next episode of Founder Voices. Thank you.